All right, it is 10 o'clock. I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is the North Kansas City Policemen's and Firemen's Pension Board meeting of the Board of Trustees. Do we start with a roll call or do we just go straight into agenda here?
No, we do call to roll, and I will initiate that as the secretary, Kate Higgins. Chief Dave Hargis.
Present.
Mike Fisher.
Here.
Kevin Freeman.
Here.
Aaron Basor.
Here.
Mayor Bryant DeLong. David Silvers.
Here.
And Anthony Bologna.
Here.
Excellent. All are present.
All right, number 2 is the approval of the minutes from the February 9th, 2021 meeting. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve the minutes of the meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a first and a second. Call the roll, please.
Chief Hargis.
Yes.
Mike Fisher.
Yes.
Chief Freeman.
Yes.
Aaron Basor.
Yes.
Mayor DeLong.
Yes.
David Silvers.
Yes.
And Anthony Bologna.
Yes.
All right, the motion is passed. Number 3 is a report from the auditors, Ruben Brown. Whoever wants to take that over.
Mayor DeLong, if I may, this is Chester Moyer.
Please, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm an audit partner with the firm Ruben Brown, and with me is Amy Reichenberger, and she's the audit manager. Both of us will be talking about the results of the audit that we performed on the police officers and firefighters retirement plan. So there are really 3 deliverables that we provide. One would be our audit report within the financial statements, and those financial statements didn't change significantly from what the information you've seen previously. Secondly, we issue a management letter, and then third, we issue a formal auditor communications, and that's going to be the majority of what we talk about today. So briefly on the management letter, it's a separate document. It's just a 2-page communication. The only comment we had in there to you as governance is just a reminder or an acknowledgement that we did prepare the financial statements and under the generally accepted accounting principles framework. Management did review them, but that is something that we are required to comment to you. As far as the auditor communications go, I'd like to share my screen, and that might help walk through information that we present in this format here, kind of like a PowerPoint format. Again, these are the communications that we're required to communicate to you. As governance, we do work closely with management in performing the audit and obtaining the information that we need to in order to conduct the audit, but we are working for governance, of course. And the engagement team we have listed here is actually larger than this. These are the people that worked the majority of the hours, but there were about 10 people in total that, that did work on the engagement, and we do appreciate all the coordination that management with the plan did work with us in order to finish this audit on time. Amy's going to take over with the communications at this point. Amy, are you able to take over?
Yes, thanks, Chester. And I did just want to echo what Chester said. We really appreciated working with Casey and Kate and Nick, who helped us get what we need to complete this audit. And to start off, I just wanted to give kind of a high-level summary of how we approach our audit of the pension plan. And then I'll get into some of the required communications. We use a risk-based audit approach where we just kind of identify what are the more risky areas and then design our audit procedures with those considerations in mind. We also evaluate the risk for fraud and discuss as an engagement team what are those risks, what those risks are related to the retirement fund, and then perform some fraud inquiries with a few different people relevant to the plan. In terms of the testing that we do, we test the investment balances. We use the actuarial evaluations provided by McLeod Consulting Group and compare those actuarial inputs to the prior year to just kind of evaluate the reasonableness of those inputs. We also do testing related to the census. testing related to the contributions that are coming into the plan, and then lastly, testing of the distribution calculations. And then based on those procedures that we do and the testing that we perform, we were able to issue an unmodified opinion or a clean audit report. And then just to clarify, we do express an opinion about whether the financial statements prepared by management with our assistance are fairly presented in all material respects in conformity with GAAP or US generally accepted accounting principles. And then we also do have to get a significant understanding of the fund's internal controls related to the plan, so we can design our audit plan around that. Moving on to the next page. A couple of other things that are ultimately management's responsibility, but that we do come in and evaluate through our audit process. We review the accounting policies that the plan follows, and these are all described in note 2 of the financial statements. We did not know any of these policies to be lacking in any authoritative guidance. We also identify and evaluate the estimates and management judgments used in the financial statements. For example, the actuarial assumptions and then the fair value of the investments obviously are the big pieces of that. And then plan our procedures around that to get comfortable with those estimates and make sure that we consider them to be reasonable. Moving on to the next page, we also identify the most sensitive disclosures that would have an effect on the financial statements. And obviously with these financial statements, we identify deposit and investment disclosures, which really just details out the fair value of the investment types and their maturities. And then also footnote 5, which details out the different components of the net pension liability. And then we also are pleased to report that we did not encounter any difficulties working with management. And then also, we wanted to point out that we don't have any uncorrected misstatements, but we do have one entry that we booked related to the employer property tax contributions that were made in October of 2020 this year. So that is obviously after the year end of the plan. And since these contributions are related to the 2020 plan year, we made one entry to book that as a receivable to the plan. So you can see that receivable on the statement of fiduciary net position if you're looking at the statements. Moving on to the next page. Here, I just really wanted to point out again, no issues working with management, no disagreements that we encountered. And then we did provide our management representation letter that was signed by, I believe, Casey and Dawn. And I think it is attached to this document as well. But yeah, that was kind of the required communications that we had prepared.
Yeah, also the previous mayor did sign this, as the report date was March 18th when we released the audit. So that that does conclude our prepared remarks about the audit of the pension plan, including our required communications to you. And we are happy to take any questions anyone would have about our audit procedures.
All right, let me get my Zoom screen back up here. Any questions for the auditors? Seeing none, thank you, Chester and Amy, for the report. Moving on. Number 4, current market and fund performance review. Barry.
Hello, everyone. Let me see if I can successfully share my screen here. Can everyone see 3 blue topped graphs or charts?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't think our asset allocation was particularly well suited for this environment, but we had pretty good returns anyway. So I was happy with that. This was another blowout quarter from a return standpoint. It wasn't quite as much of a blowout quarter as the fourth quarter, but the fourth quarter last year was one of the biggest on record. This one's pretty big. I'll start with the economy. The GDP in the quarter was up 6.4%. A normal GDP increase is 1.5 to 2.5. So what you're seeing here is recovery from the pandemic. We'll be back to where we were at the end of 2019 at some point in this quarter. Comment about the jobs report, very controversial. The jobs report came in about a third to a quarter of what people were predicting. The controversy is whether or not the $300 a week that people are getting in support is causing people to not work. As you know, somebody who has had more than a few economics courses, I'll tell you, as I was trying to patiently explain to my wife, who was outraged at this discussion, there's really no question that $300 a week is a disincentive to work. I mean, that's just kind of a fact. The question is how much of a disincentive it was and how much it contributed to the weak jobs report. And that's a matter of conjecture. I mean, we've never really had macroeconomic conditions like this. But my guess is the numbers probably, the sustainable number is probably between this most recent report. If you average the most recent report with the last 2 months, the jobs numbers are still pretty good. But I suspect that there has been some suppression because of this $300 a week. Whether or not you think that's a good thing or a bad thing is a political issue. But the economy is nonetheless recovering, and I think the real question right now is inflation, and we're getting tons of stuff about inflation. It is a little stunning given what people have seen, and I'm sure you in city government have seen this in trying to manage things. Everybody's paying more for certain things. Lumber is, pardon the pun, through the roof, but other building materials like copper are as well. And yet in the official inflation numbers that the government uses, we're really not seeing too much inflation yet, and the Fed is not reacting to it. I'm getting the feeling that that's going to change, and if it does, if the Federal Reserve is forced to start fighting inflation as opposed to supporting the economy, it's going to have pretty negative implications for the stock market, and both stocks and bonds. So it's really inflation, I think, and the Fed's response to it that is the thing to watch. But for right now, everything is coming back. All the things that were hurt the most are coming back the most. So you're seeing, energy is coming back, airlines are coming back, hospitality, everything relationship to travel, particularly on the value as opposed to the growth side of the stock market. And we'll see that in just a minute. If you look in the chart in the upper right-hand corner, you can see just how strong this quarter was. The Russell 3000, which is a very broad measure of U.S. stocks, much broader than the S&P 500, as this number 3000 would suggest, was up 6.3%. That's just in one quarter. A normal increase for the S&P 500 is about 2. So this is about 3 times a normal quarter. It was even more for small cap stocks. The Russell 2000, or the smallest 2000 of the 3000, that was up almost 13%, about double what the general indice in large cap was up. Foreign stocks were up, but not by as much. The overall foreign index was up about 3.5%. That's divided into developed stocks, which is represented by the EFA abbreviation, in emerging market stocks. China, Brazil, Russia, and lesser countries of lesser importance like Egypt are in the emerging market index, was up a little bit less, but all stocks were good. Now, here's the big thing to understand about the composition, and that's the U.S. aggregate. That is a broad measure of investment grade U.S. bonds. That was down 3.4%. Bonds rarely go down, and they almost never go down that much. That's the worst quarterly bond number in like 40 years. So there was a big reset in the bond market, particularly for longer dated bonds, that resulted in that negative number. And to the extent that you had stocks versus bonds, you did really well, because stocks did really well and bonds did really badly. That rarely happens to this extent. So that was the real issue in terms of whether your asset allocation did better or worse than other people. Last thing to say about this page is the huge spread between value and growth. If you look down in the lower left-hand column, that 11 point in the upper left-hand corner of that graph, that 11.3, and I guess I'm sharing the screen so I can point, can't I? You can see my little thing going around there. That 11.3% is LC large cap value stocks. And over here, we have large cap growth stocks. That would be the so-called FANG stocks, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, etc. Value was up 11.3, growth was up 0.9. So there was a huge spread, and it was also true in mid-cap stocks, and it was also true in small-cap stocks. Mid-cap growth stocks were actually down a little bit. And the biggest performer were small cap did better than large cap. Small cap value was the best, was up 21% in one quarter. So that was a huge gain. We do not break out value and growth, so we were neither helped nor hurt by that. We have a core indices, so we kind of got these numbers in the middle for our allocations. But that's worth noting. So we have not really much of an overweight in small cap, which did really well. We have a fairly big slug of international stocks, EAFE and emerging market stocks. We are not overweighted in value. For all of those reasons, I would have thought, maybe we would have had an average to below average return, but we did not. We had an above average return. Our portfolio was up 3.3%. We ranked in the 39th percentile. What that means is we outperformed about 60%, 61% to be exact, of portfolios of this is just public plans, portfolios of public plans, but of all sizes. So CAPERS and MAPERS, the Kansas City and Missouri state plans, would be in that from a sampling stand. I don't know if they're literally in it because this is a sample, but plans like that would be in this. We are almost all indexed. Our only two active managers are Baylor, our real estate manager, and Johnson. Our equity is all indexed with Vanguard to hold the costs down. So we basically did what the indexes did, more or less. And the indexes were average to below average. This is where the indexes rank within the universe of managers overall. You would think they would always be in the 50th percentile, but sometimes active managers do better than the indexes. Sometimes they do worse. In the Vanguard Extended, which is mid and small cap stock, they did a little worse. They did a little better than the index, and the other two, they kind of were spread around the indexes. And then we get down to the bottom. We only have 25% of our money with Johnson, the bond manager. And of course, that money lost 3.4%. That was the really bad part that was dragging us down. But we have 10% with Baylor. So 25% is a little bit on the skinny side in terms of bonds, and that's by intention. We think real estate is going to do better than bonds going forward. And that's probably, well, almost certainly, that's why our 3.3% was better than the average return for this quarter, and why we got a 39 ranking. Our rankings going back in the past are stellar. I mean, we're 21st percentile fiscal year to date, 19th for 1 year, 19th for 3 years, 11th for 5 years, and 12th percentile for 10 years, which means we've outperformed almost everybody. So very simple asset allocation, about as simple as it gets, but we've had really good returns from it. Any questions about any of this?
All right, were there any questions?
Okay.
Seeing none, thank you for the report, Barry.
I'm not quite done yet.
Oh, you're not done. I was trying to move on.
I know.
Continue on.
Get this guy off the stage, and that's understandable. I have to give this, though. We have to replenish our cash to pay benefits. And so I am recommending that we move $615,000 from large cap, that we basically sell, well, not basically, that we sell $615,000 of the Vanguard large cap fund. That money will go into the cash bucket and can then be used to pay benefits. We have agreed at previous meetings to keep our cash at about $800,000 in order to pay benefits and meet, unexpected drop payments. We've calculated that with the actuary. I've sent the trade ticket to Kate, so it just needs to be signed and submitted. or we can use the online system if we're ready to do that. That was something we discussed at prior meetings, but I'm not sure we need a motion to do that or not, but we usually take one. And so I'm informing you, but I'm also suggesting that that you all approve the sale of $650,000 of large cap, the money to be left in cash to pay benefits.
Okay. So I will go ahead and recuse myself from the actual sale of this just because the relationship of my daytime job in Vanguard itself. Eventually this trade would end up potentially back on my desk at my workplace. So I will recuse myself, but I will, I guess, still chair this and ask for a first on the sale of the security. We have a motion to sell.
I make a motion that we sell the recommended amount, the amount that Barry recommended to replenish our cash accounts.
Perfect. Do we have a second?
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Chief Hargis,
Yes.
Mike Fisher,
Yes.
Chief Freeman,
Yes.
Aaron Besor,
Yes.
and the mayor declined himself out on this.
I'm going
David
to-
Silvers,
Yes.
sorry, and Anthony Bologna.
Yes.
Thanks. And then if we could have someone else sign that ticket too, mostly just out of an abundance of caution. I mean, I'm a couple arm lengths away, but the last thing I need is something like this to come back around already. So was there anything else from you, Barry, before I run you off again?
I have in my notes that we were to have a discussion of real estate, sort of an educational nature. I don't have prepared materials, but I am ready to go through the real estate investment, explain what it is and what it does in 10 or 15 minutes. But if you would like, we could delay that until the next meeting. Up to you.
I think that was brought up my suggestion, so I'm okay delaying that till the next meeting.
All right. If you are okay, seeing no objection to that, we will hold on until next meeting.
Hey,
Let me just say, I have not met the mayor, the new mayor. I just learned. First of all, you've got the same first name as my last name.
Yeah.
Second of all, you work for Vanguard, and we've got most of our money with Vanguard.
No, I work for State Street Bank. Sorry, I'm on the back end.
I see.
So we serve as actually a custodian for Vanguard and handle some of the fund accounting, stuff like that. Not the department I'm in, but we do. And due to, if there's any issues and the trade doesn't flow through straight through, there is potential that could end up back in my hands in some way. So not everything will be recusing, but things I definitely know that we have some sort of relationship with. I'll try to just stay clear. And that was part of my agreement with my ethics agreement with my company. So.
Got it. Okay. Well,
yeah.
Great.
And not with Vanguard. No. I'm not that close, but we do custodian work on that fund. So.
Well, I hope you're at least to some extent a Vanguard fund because we got a lot of Vanguard.
Yeah. Perfect.
Hey, Mayor, before you move off, this is Bob West, the outside legal counsel to the fund. And also I'd like to introduce myself and welcome you to the board. And but on the Baylor thing that Barry just touched base on, and that's going to be reviewed at the next meeting, I had sent out a memo to the board a few weeks ago after you changed your investment allocation into the Baylor Fund. So this is maybe just a good opportunity to, I would encourage all the board members, and especially since Barry might be reviewing that at the next meeting, just take a few minutes. As I said in my memo, it's very readable. It would be just excellent to for the board to know, given the scope of your investment in it, what that fund is doing. I'm not saying that in a negative or judgmental way whatsoever. It's just kind of one of those basic fiduciary concepts of it's not the fact you're invested. It's the decision process that went into it. So that might work out really well for your next meeting if you've reviewed that, and then you may have some questions as well for Barry at that point. But that was it. Thank you for the me jumping in there.
No, I thank you for that. And I don't think I got that report. So if you could forward that to me. And sorry if I did.
Yeah. And let me just say one thing to close that out before I step off the stage. This was one quarter where that decision worked out particularly well. Now, it's not always going to be like this. I don't want to suggest that it is, but the reason we did that was to protect ourselves from declining bond values if inflation and interest rates in fact increase. And you can see Baylor, had a 2% gain and the bonds had a negative 3.7% loss. That's a spread of almost 6 percentage points. So that's a meaningful. Now, it's never probably going to be that extreme again, but I just wanted to point out this is exactly the reason to have more money in real estate than in bonds. Now, this trade, of course, could go against us at some point. If it does, I'll explain that, but this is really why we did it.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that report. You are done this time, right?
Yes, sir, I am.
Okay. Any questions? All right. Now we are moving on to the quarterly report. Mindy, please go ahead.
Good morning. This is the quarterly plan administration report. I think that's going to be shared here in a minute, but I'll get started. We are seeing significant interest in retirement from the members. We prepared benefit calculations for 4 members who are planning to retire, and for 1 member, we prepared retirement illustrations for the future. We did not have any retirements in February, March, or April, but we are entering a busy retirement cycle. For the drop plan, we had 1 member who exited the drop program. He terminated in April and began receiving his monthly payment in May. For additional services provided to retirees, we provided pension verification to a retiree who was building a house. For the federal and state surveys, we submitted the first quarter JC PER report on behalf of the plan. For benefit payments, drop balances, and return of contributions for February and March was $248,000. That represents benefit payments to our current retirees. In April, you'll see the increase is $435,000. What that is for is that includes $187,000 that was paid as part of that drop payout. Now, going forward in the next few months, you'll see that $248,000 number go up as we've added a new retiree May 1st. We will add a new retiree June 1st and another new retiree July 1st. For contributions during the quarter, this is through the April 30th pay period. For the city was right under $110,000, and for the employees was $49,000. In addition, we just received word that the city property tax contributions will be wired to the custodian U.S. Bank this week, and that amount is $760,000. That concludes my report. Any questions?
All right. Any questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Mindy, for the report.
Thank you.
Next item, our legal report. Bob.
Thanks again, Mayor. Nothing really to report on my end for this meeting. The only thing we've reported on recently are some of the legislative developments. In particular, I mentioned the one development about this legislation that was introduced to create new police districts. That bill has not had been given a hearing, so I'm assuming it's not going to be. We're not going to be seeing anything further with that, and there would be no impact on the pension fund as a result, and nothing else of any interest really is getting any traction up to the legislature this year that would affect our North Kansas City fund. So that's really all I have then for this meeting, Mayor.
Perfect. Thank you for the report. Were there any questions for Bob? Nope. All right. Next item. Any other comments or any other business anyone would like to bring before the body?
Barry, you talked about the online transactions. We started that process in January or so and kind of got set up, but it kind of fell off the earth about completing the training. So we might get back on that so we can finish that, because it would probably be easier for me to do that online transactions as opposed to the way we've been doing them. You're muted, Barry.
There's no immediate need in terms of days, but we've got about we have about $185,000 in cash. So, we could, one check could hit that and not clear. So we need to do it fairly soon.
Well, we can do the transaction we did today. I'll go ahead and sign that and we'll get that done. But moving forward, we need to finish our training so we can do online in the future.
Would you like me to have the custodial banker call you to set that up?
Yes.
I will do that.
Perfect. Anyone else? Chief Friedman, go ahead.
Chief Hargis and I just had a brief discussion recently about, as the pandemic continues to ease and we start to cycle away from all these virtual meetings, they have a discussion about the next meeting of this board to be back in person. So I just wanted to open that up for discussion for everybody.
Anybody have any thoughts on that?
Speaking for myself, I'm coming to Kansas City for the next meeting for the Overland Park Board, and I would be delighted to do your board as well in person. I see Mindy smiling and nodding too. I think we've had enough of our homes.
No, I just had council, we're talking about going back potentially in June and the trajectory of where things are heading in 3 months, that probably makes sense to go ahead and get back in person on these. So unless anyone has any objection or something substantially changes, I guess we'll plan on next meeting being in person.
And that will be August 10th, just for everybody's knowledge.
Thank you. All right. Any other comments? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Any objection? All right, this meeting is adjourned. Everyone have a good one. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Good day.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Are allowed to drive. And as someone who's ridden scooters before, that's not always clear to me when you're